This video is sponsored by the Pedal Movie. Today on Riffs, Beards, and Gear, we talk about the 5 greatest moments in Overdrive history. Being somewhat of an Overdrive junkie, if I don't say so myself, I thought we would celebrate the release of Reverb.com's The Pedal Movie, which is fantastic, by the way, with doing a video that kind of outlines the 5 greatest moments in Overdrive history. Moment number 1, we go all the way back to 1977 with the release of the Boss OD1, which was part of the original compact series from Boss. Now, the lines are a little blurry as to what technically constitutes the first Overdrive pedal as we know it today, but really the first Overdrive pedal, as I think of it, is the OD1. Now, the OD1 was a pretty cool pedal for its time, and in the context of 1977, you had non-master volume amps that could only sound crunchy and gainy when they were at ear-blistering volumes. And in that context, and context is important as we will see later on in this video, the Overdrive pedal really overdrove the input of a guitar amp, and you didn't necessarily have to turn it up as loud to get that same tone if you had an Overdrive pedal going into your Marshall Plexi or Hi-Watt or whatever. It was a very good pedal. Greatest moment number 2 for Overdrives, I would say, is in 1979 with the advent of the Ibanez TS-808 Tube Screamer. Ibanez really wanted a piece of that sweet, sweet Boss OD1 pie, and they set out to make a competitor, simply put, to the OD1. And they sourced it out to Maxon, and Maxon came up with the TS-808. The OD1 uses asymmetrical clipping, which is gonna give you more of a bite in flavor and tone. And they had actually a copyright on this. So the TS-808 uses symmetrical clipping to give you a little bit more of a smoother tone with less spiky high-end frequencies. This was a very successful pedal and was discontinued just a few years later in favor of the TS9. Greatest moment number 3 for Overdrives, I would say, is the 80s hair metal scene. Now, in context, remember we talked about context before, in the 70s, amps didn't have master volume, so you were trying to get cranked tones without having to crank your amp. Well, fast forward to the 80s and you had newer amplifiers, master volume amplifiers, like the Marshall JCM 800, and guitarists were still using their, what was now a Boss Super Overdrive. And what would happen if they put an overdrive into an already distorted amplifier? Well, it would tighten your tone up. It would smooth things out and kind of maybe scoop out a little bit of those low mids and just tighten up your sound and make it real heavy, which is perfectly suited for playing, you know, Motley Crue riffs. Greatest moment for Overdrives number 4, in my opinion, is gonna be the boutique pedal explosion of the 1990s. Now, up until the 1990s, you were basically stuck with whatever a company's offering was. Along comes guys like Robert Keeley, Mike Fuller, Zachary Vex. All of these boutique pedal companies started sprouting up, and now you could get very, very high quality tones out of your pedals. You could also get them at a fraction of the price as, say, a vintage Tube Screamer or something like that. You could also, in some cases, have your pedal tailored to what you wanted it to sound like. This had never really been done before, and this was a fairly new concept, and it's incredible to think about now, as everything was done primarily over mail order. So you would just fill out your card, include a check, send it, and maybe in 6 weeks, you got a pedal back in the mail. It's pretty wild. Greatest moment number 5, in my opinion, for Overdrives is gonna be the digital revolution beginning in the early 2000s to present day. Beginning in the old days with the Line 6 pod all the way up to the current Fractal Axe-Fx and Line 6 Helixes, as well as the desktop digital audio plugins, young people and young guitarists who don't know anything about pedals can now experiment with the digital versions of real life pedals and kind of get a taste of what they actually like. This is something I did 20 years ago with the original Line 6 pod. I figured out what a tube screamer sounded like. I figured out what the difference between a tube screamer or a clon might be digitally, and that would kind of steer me in the direction of what I would actually look for in real life. Because keep in mind, most of these things in the digital realm are unobtainable or very, very expensive. So it's not like you would want to take a chance on buying something that you potentially would not like. So I think the digital revolution has really helped catapult the physical pedal world forward for over 20 years now. And that does it for the 5 greatest moments in Overdrive history. Shout out to Reverb and the Pedal Movie for sponsoring this video. Check the description down below. The Pedal Movie is a legit great movie. I've watched it twice already. It is fascinating. It is everything I wanted it to be, and actually a lot more. Kudos to Reverb for making such a wonderful piece of film for us guitar nerds. And with that, you've been wonderful. I've been Fluff. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.